beast! Ah!
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Not the Bees, the Nicolas Cage filmography podcast. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Eggs.
And this week, we watched the utter snooze fest that is 2015's The Runner, written and directed by Austin Stark, starring Nicolas Cage and Sarah Paulson, as well as Wendell Pierce and several other Hey, It's That guys. We open on the Deepwater Horizon oil rig explosion. Remember that one, kids? Congressman Colin Price, played by Cage, is watching a news broadcast a day and a half later. We see more images of the aftermath and responding efforts to stop the flow and clean the Gulf. Next, Colin is with the Coast Guard discussing how to keep operations of the Gulf moving for cleanup. He visits a shrimping boat, and the captain tells him BP has contracted some of their boats, but most of them are docked because they can't shrimp, and BP is only paying about a third of the cost per boat to contract the things that they are using. Driving through town, we see people holding up signs asking for help. Colin's voice addresses Congress, playing over images of seabirds covered in oil and more cleanup efforts. He says it's the most devastating man-made environmental disaster in U.S. history, but the people will have to live through the repercussions long after the cleanup. He's here as a resident. The residents of Louisiana need commitments from BP and the government, not just to rebuild, but to give them confidence the government is on their side. He says this is America's wetland. This is America's ocean. He becomes emotional and says he'll submit the rest of his written statement to the record and leaves. Next, we see Colin going for a morning run. When he returns, an SUV is parked at the curb and Frank Legrand, played by Wendell Pierce, is waiting for him. He's been calling. He says Colin put on quite a show. Colin says it wasn't a show. He was sloppy in his speech and he was weak. Frank says he was honest and shows him the paper. There's an article about Colin from the hearing fighting for Louisiana. Everyone's picked up the story. He wants to milk it to get Colin a Senate seat. He says it's not about the spill, it's about him. Colin says they should use it for the spill, but Frank doesn't seem to like the idea and tells Colin he has a train he needs to catch. Colin is moving through his day. He sees a pretty girl on an escalator. He's driven through town looking at run-down abandoned houses. He tells his assistant in the front seat that he wants the EPA and the Coast Guard closed to the press. His assistant tries to remind him that Frank doesn't want it, but Colin insists and says it's a priority. He wants his speech to be tasteful. The assistant says 2020 is going to open with his speech on June 17th. Colin looks excited. They pull into a lot to meet with the Coast Guard. He asks how often they're receiving soft boom, and it's not often enough. He says he'll try to find out how to get more and circle back. He tells them that they have his personal number and to call if they need anything else. On the road again, Colin makes a call to get soft boom delivered daily. He's very assertive and says he's not trying to be rude, but he's been through this several times, and he's tired of the posturing. He'll call an admiral, the president. He doesn't care. The person on the other end must agree as he thanks the person and ends the call. Next, we're in a boardroom, and there's a meeting with Colin, his wife Deborah, Connie Nielsen, and Mark Lavin, Brian Batt. They're talking about the industry needs of Louisiana and oil. Mark says he runs a diversified portfolio for Gulf producers of oil. He knows Colin has leaned left in the past, but he's hoping he can sway him to be on the side of his firm's interests. Colin says there are several politicians in the area that align with his interests, so why him? Mark says he's a winner. Colin says he doesn't pander to campaign financing. Mark says he won't win the Senate seat unless he reconsiders. Colin says he thought this was a lobby meeting. We haven't decided if we're running for Senate. Deborah says to hear Frank out. Mark says we're in a recession. Remember that, kids? This election will be about the economy. A moratorium will be more devastating than the oil spill, but Colin says Mark misunderstood. He's not looking for a temporary moratorium. He wants to phase out drilling altogether. Oil is an addiction. Right now, it'll be hard to deny how harmful and antiquated it is. He tells Mark that he should know that green energy is where they should be creating jobs. Mark can't seem to believe what he's hearing. Deborah apologizes for wasting Mark's time. Mark tells Colin he won't win. Colin says we'll see. Outside, Colin and Deborah argue. He says it wasn't smart to mention the Senate when they haven't announced that he's running, and she says he humiliated her. Her firm does a lot of business with Mark. Colin says he didn't ask her to do that, but he won't be beholden to Mark Lavin or anyone else. She tells him that his speech was a godsend and not to blow it. Colin gets a call. He leaves saying he'll see her at home. Next, Colin is in a hotel room with a woman named Lucy, played by Sierra Payton. Frank LeGrand told him she's been calling the office. She says Terrence knows about them. He came home last night drunk talking shit, but he won't say anything. Lucy has been drinking the minibar and taking pills. Colin tells her she's had enough of those. He says he's sorry and he hugs her. She says she misses him. She tries to get him to sleep with her, but he gets up and leaves. He notices a camera in the corner of the elevator. At home, Colin is listening to a record and trying to relax. Deborah comes in and tells him he needs to get ready. They're being picked up in 15 minutes for a school board fundraiser. He asks her to sit with him for a minute. He remarks on the glass of wine she's holding and asks when they started stocking alcohol in the house again. She said he's been sober for 16 years. She thinks they're safe. We can't all get high on Diet Coke. He reminisces about their first legislative run and putting up signs at 2 a.m. on the highway, the two of them fresh out of law school. He wants to do couples counseling. He knows she doesn't want to, but they don't have a choice. She asks if he had a choice when he slept with a 27-year-old cheerleading coach. Colin sits back and says, Frank told you. She says it doesn't matter who told her. He says he's sorry. He was trying. He really was. She asks what he wants to hear, that she's fine, that he keeps ruining everything they worked for. He says not everything is about their career. She says she wishes that were true. Next, Colin is being made ready for a television interview. Lucy is coaching cheerleaders on the high school track. She's called by a woman on the other side of a fence. She's a reporter with a local publication. She needs to ask about Lucy's relationship with Congressman Price. Lucy says she has no idea who that is. In Colin's interview, the interviewer is asking Colin about being elected in a predominantly black district and his historically elected black representation over the last 40 years. Colin says he thinks he won due to trust. His wife is a respected lawyer. He spent 8 years working in the legislature. The interviewer brings up Colin's political upbringing, that people still love his father, who was mayor back in the 70s. Colin says his dad did stuff that took a lot of guys to help black people during the civil rights movement. The interviewer asks about his dad's life after politics. He lost 3 consecutive elections for Senate and was involved in a number of incidents. What happened? Colin says his father was an alcoholic. Lucy is desperately trying to contact Colin. Colin continues to talk about the spill in his interview and that BP needs to pay them, and he's going to be there for them. On the docks in the Gulf, the same reporter that approached Lucy is approaching some fishermen. One of them is Terrence, Lucy's husband. The interviewer asks Colin if he'll run for Senate. He says that's a ways off. His focus is on the spill and representing the 2nd District of Louisiana in Congress. The interviewer thanks him, and they end the taping. Colin checks his phone, looks at his wife, and closes his eyes. At their house, Deborah is letting 2 people in, Kate Haber, played by Sarah Paulson, and Frank LeGrand. There's video footage of Colin and Lucy in an elevator making out. It's been published on the site of the local newspaper that approached Lucy and Terrence. Deborah asks when the story will break nationally, and Kate says by the morning. Deborah is worried that people will think that Colin knew Lucy, that slut, was the fisherman's wife. Frank says she's right. Colin also agrees. He spoke at the oyster company Terrence works for. That's how he met Lucy. Colin says he'll have to come clean and set a press conference. Kate advises against that. They should see how this plays out. Frank asks if she thinks it'll blow over, and she says no, but they can weather it. Deborah says Colin didn't commit a crime, but Frank says to remember what's going on out there. How will it look to see the superhero of the BP oil spill having an affair with a black fisherman's wife? He says Colin won't have any friends in Washington after this. He was just crying on TV 5 days ago about the spill. Kate says maybe Frank is right, but we need to stay cool. Kate brings up another scandal from just last year. This is Louisiana. Frank says Colin is a white man in a black district. The man in the other scandal was reelected. That won't happen here. He's a white congressman in a black district. He has a hard enough time trying to win over with nothing over his head. That's why the Senate made sense. At least there's white voters. Colin says it still does make sense. Colin says to keep focus on the work they are currently doing, but not this bullshit. He tells Deborah they should get some sleep and she slaps him. He leaves the room and goes to sleep in an office with a pull-out bed. News crews show up in the middle of the night. Around 1 p.m. the next day, Colin's phone rings. It's a woman named Jen Wyman, the lieutenant in the Coast Guard he's been meeting with. She says they haven't received any soft boom in over a week and are running low. The spill is moving west and they don't have enough to contain it. Colin looks out the window and asks if she hasn't heard what's been going on. She says she hasn't, and he says he'll put her in touch with his friend Dave Erickson. He's the president of a parish and will be able to help her, and hangs up. Next, we see a smattering of reporters giving their scoops outside of Colin's home. Then his father, Rain, played by Peter Fonda, shows up. The reporters ask him questions, but he says to remember that Louisiana has always been one big family. We don't abandon our family when they make a mistake. In the house, Rain gives some diatribe about Genghis Khan and how 1 in every 2 people has a direct family link to him, and plenty of men with power in the past have had affairs. JFK, FDR, Clinton. He wasn't much of a philanderer in office, but he gets where Colin is coming from. Colin says that's enough. Rain asks why he's here. He hasn't heard from Colin in over a year, and now he wants him to be a part of this fiasco. Colin says he didn't invite him. Deborah says since Rain has experience with scandals, please give Colin advice. Rain says fuck everyone. Colin can't hear that. He says they're in the middle of a disaster out there and he can't even leave his house. He's already left the people out to dry. His wife tells Colin that he needs to be rethinking about himself right now, thinking about their marriage. It's not about his job right now, but he is not going to resign. Colin Googles himself. He is very disappointed. Colin meets Kate the next morning. He tells her he's decided to resign, and she says he's doing the right thing. He says he needs her help to get through this. He's not retiring. He'll miss the Senate run, but after the spill is over. Kate says she doesn't know anyone who's resigned and then been elected again. He should think about doing something new. Colin asks if she remembers why he hired her. What did he say? She says he told her she didn't have her head up her ass. He says he trusts her, and she says to stay out of the press for a long time. Give people time to forgive you. She can't give him a time frame. At home, Deborah is upset that Colin is not only resigning, but she was not the first person he told. She says he's just scared everyone will stop loving him. His whores, his father, his constituents. It's all the same. Colin tells her to stop. She says she doesn't care about the city anymore. Colin hugs her. She tells him if he resigns, she's leaving him. At a press conference, Colin resigns. Next, he's watching coverage of the spill. A Louisiana senator is talking to Wolf Blitzer about the spill finally being stopped after 87 days. Colin pours himself a drink for the first time in 16 years and downs it. Next, we see him hiring a prostitute. Deborah is sitting at her vanity at home and is clearly upset. Then we have a montage of Colin running while various crews are seen cleaning the disaster and other moments of his life. In the morning, Colin's phone rings. He's still sleeping, a bottle of liquor next to the bed. A woman is calling to remind him of his 9 o'clock appointment at a fisherman's co-op. She's hoping he's on his way and says please don't be late again. The fishermen are telling a representative about their problems making a living. The spill may be stopped, but the water is dead. The representative of Louisiana National tells him he understands, but he needs to talk to BP to get money from the claims fund that they sent over. One of the fishermen says they haven't gotten anything since the emergency payout in May. They had to lay off a bunch of workers. Colin finally shows up, apologizes for being late, and wants to speak to the rep privately. He tells the rep these people have been with Louisiana National for years. He's their lawyer, and there's an organization set up to help the fishermen. It's a pro bono nonprofit that was set up after the spill. He shows the rep the plans to help offset mortgages and other things. The rep says that it's BP's responsibility, but Colin says, you know they aren't going to pay. A lot of these men are already in default. If you don't come through, the businesses will foreclose. This is in your interest as well. The rep says it's too low. Colin tries to talk another fisherman into filing Chapter 11. It'll make National do what they're supposed to do and help out with insurance payments. The fisherman doesn't want to do that. It'll taint their names. Colin says he understands, but at this point, it's about survival. There's a question of money, but Colin is working on it. Colin is approached by a reporter who wants to talk about GCCF and Colin's foundation. Colin isn't interested. At the foundation, there's issues with funding, and Colin says he can wire more of his money in, but the woman he's talking to says that might be a good idea if it wasn't for his scandal. It's a great cause, it's just not working. Colin goes to a news station with Frank LeGrand. A lawyer Frank knows is giving an interview about stopping drilling and focusing on green energy. They go to lunch after, and Colin says he heard Frank will be running the lawyer's campaign for Senate. Colin wants to be a consultant in the campaign. If he does well, maybe he'll get a position down the line. When the waitress comes over to check on them, Colin asks for another Diet Coke. Frank asks if he doesn't want a beer or bourbon. It's a small town. Colin says he's fine. Frank says it's too risky. If word gets out he's drinking again, it'll tank the campaign. Colin goes to meet with Kate. They had an appointment and he's late. She gives him a folder with the latest on him. His scandal, questions on whether his foundation is legit, all things that are expected. Colin doesn't understand how this work can be considered negative. He asks how she is. She tells him that she's separated. She's thinking of leaving her job, but otherwise she's great. Colin tries to get Kate to blow off her 6 o'clock meeting to have a drink with him. At first she declines, but then agrees. They have a drink at her hotel, and he talks about being a functional alcoholic until he wasn't. He doesn't know what was driving his life before. All the speeches and campaigns. He misses it, though. Kate tells him it'll get better. They kiss. They go up to her room and they have sex. He gets dressed to leave and tells her she's special. The next day, Colin goes to the home he used to share with Deborah to drop off some papers for their lawyer. The housekeeper says she's still at the office, but it's good to see him. Back at his apartment, the phone is ringing as he walks in with groceries, and the machine picks it up. It's his dad. He just says Colin a few times, but sounds weak. Colin rushes over to his dad's house. He spoke to Rain's doctor. He needs surgery. But Rain asks why. His liver is 70% dead. Colin says he's making arrangements to handle the bills. He knows Rain is in the red after his last campaign. He wouldn't take his son's money and hurt his wife like that. He tells him he also stopped using his own money to fund his nonprofit. On the porch, Rain says that people that speak to him on the street only remember him when he was mayor. They don't remember the scandals that came after. He says Colin will be back in the saddle in no time, but Colin tells him that this isn't a publicity stunt and then chastises Rain for continuing to drink. Rain tells Colin he may hate his guts, but he turned out okay. At his apartment, Colin dumps out his booze and calls Kate. He tells her he had a dream they went to high school together and they were just normal kids, and he asks her to the prom. Then he asks if she can come visit for a few days as her young boys are running around in the kitchen. She says, how about this weekend? Later, when he arrives at the foundation, the people waiting applaud him as he's walking in. He's very confused. In the office, the manager tells him there was a call from GCCF this morning. BP has offered $3.5 million to fund the fishermen's claims and to help with the cost of bankruptcy filing. Colin says it's too good to be true, but the manager says that she checked the account when she came in and the money is there. The numbers add up. Colin is still suspicious. There are several other foundations doing the same, so why them? The manager suggests publicity, but Colin says exactly. He's engrossed in a scandal. The manager says it barely touches on the scandal. Does he want to send it back? Colin says hell no. Deborah sees the article about the pledge of funds while going over their divorce papers. Next, we see Colin picking Kate up at the airport. She tells him she spoke to someone at BP and they thought the money would mean a wave of funding, which makes sense because the GCCF has gotten a lot of criticism. Colin wants to know why him, but Kate says, who cares? He's coming off this like a winner. Colin says okay, invites her to a barbecue at one of his clients' places. At the barbecue, one of the wives says that he got a bad deal. A senator had a prostitution scandal that keeps getting reelected, and all Colin did was cheat on his wife. Big deal. He's the only one trying to help them. She goes to get drinks, and Kate goes to help. One of the fishermen says he's hearing Colin is rattling cages at BP. Sounds like they may not be out of business just yet. Says Colin has done good. Colin and Kate bang that night. In the morning, Colin sees the news has a breaking story about the same senator that had a prostitution scandal, and he was arrested. He gets a call. It's Mark's firm asking for a meeting at 3 p.m. Mark tells Colin that the senator isn't resigning, but he'll lose the next election. He wants Colin to run. He believes he can win. He just needs the right spin machine. Turns out Mark authorized the BP grant of $3.5 million. Colin is incensed. He asks if BP is going to finance his campaign, but Mark says he's going to fund it himself. Mark says they need someone from Louisiana on their side that cares about this issue. He needs Colin to change his position on energy from clean and green to oil. He'll make Colin the hero of it. Colin is concerned because he'll have to give up the foundation. Mark says if it's not him, it'll be someone else, but the senator isn't going to win. It's another guy named Chris Wilcox. Colin asks why Mark thinks he'll do this, and Mark says it's because he's standing there. His job is to keep job creation up in Louisiana. Colin thanks him for his time and goes to leave, so Mark insults him and says no one will remember him for anything other than fucking a fisherman's wife. As Colin walks away, Mark says Colin needs someone like him. Colin says he knows. Back at Deborah's, she's writing up some work and gets a message from Mark that they will be moving on from Colin. At his apartment, Colin and Kate discuss the meeting. She doesn't understand why he'd take a meeting if he's not going to work with Mark. Colin says he needed to hear him out. Even if he hasn't resigned, he wouldn't have won the Senate seat. They were always maneuvering him and he was in denial. Kate says that's not true. He stands for something. He asked her to stay for a few more days, but she says she has work and kids. He offers to come up, but she says no because neither of them are divorced. He says they feel right. She asks what about his career. They've already been reckless. He holds her hand and says this feels real to him. If it means he can't run again, so be it. The next morning, Kate tells him goodbye and leaves to go home. At the foundation, the lobby is full, but Colin explains the grant was for existing claims and is only for the people they've already worked with, but these are all new claimants. At the hospital, Colin speaks to the doctor about his father's surgery and the alcohol detox that occurred prior. The doctor tells Colin to spend some time with Rain. Deborah is with his father when Colin walks in. He didn't expect to see her, and she's dealing with a huge case. She says he's her father too, and she'll be outside. Colin sits down and asks Rain how he's feeling. Rain says ask in 7 hours, but Colin says he'll be okay. He asks Rain about a speech he gave during the civil rights movement. He was too young to understand exactly what his dad was saying, but he knew it was about right and wrong. But Rain cuts him off and says, don't feel sorry for me. Colin says, all right. Rain rolls over and tells Colin to close the shades. Outside, Deborah says he's been sleeping with his publicist. Colin says it's none of her business. She says it's another disaster waiting to happen, and he wants to know why she cares. She says it's hard to stop caring after 25 years. He says, but you did. She apologizes. She doesn't want to sign the divorce papers. He walks away. Deborah calls after him and says if he falls on one issue, we can accomplish everything we've been working for. You can't make this on your own this time. She wants him to work with Mark. Colin walks back and says 500,000 people have filed claims with GCCF. He'd be responsible for all of them. He says it won't change anything. He asks why she's doing this. She says she loves him, even if he doesn't take the deal. He tells her not to come back after his dad's surgery and walks away. In the waiting room of the hospital, the doctor comes in and tells Colin that his father didn't make it through the surgery. As Colin is leaving the hospital, he lights his father's lighter. At his apartment, he calls Kate at home. It's a bad time. Her husband is home. She takes the call outside and informs Colin that her and her husband are going to try and work it out. Colin is upset. Kate apologizes, but what did he think was going to happen? That she'd campaign with him? He wasn't giving up politics for her. He would have resented her. Colin asks if she loves her husband. She tells him to tell her that she's wrong. Colin apologizes for calling late and hangs up. Colin goes to a bar and gets wasted. He drives over to the house he shared with Deborah, but she's changed the gate code so his remote doesn't work. He decides instead to drive through the gate and the garage door past it. Deborah is at the car door trying to get him to open the door. In the house, Deborah tells him he's a good man, but she married him because she knew he'd be a great man. And great men aren't always decent, but they tell people what they should remember and forget and to insulate them from frailty. Only great men know how to make other people's helplessness tolerable. This is all said over scenes we've already seen at Mark's office at Colin's 3 p.m. meeting a few days ago. Next, we see ships sailing in the Gulf. Colin is putting on tennis shoes at home with his wife. He glances at her as she sleeps in their bed. He gives a speech at a plant. He talks about his connections to the area, including knowing people from multiple generations that work in this plant. He's here to be a solution. We can't forget the 11 people that died on the oil rig. We also can't forget that the spill did to the infrastructure. But we also can't let tragedy force them into a bad decision. Be patient with GCCF. Let's work together. We need each other. Mark, Frank, and Deborah watch from the back of the crowd while he finishes his speech. He's running for Senate. Next, we see Colin running through D.C. Looks like he won his Senate seat. Screen fades out. The end. Megan.
Hi.
What did you think about this movie?
This movie makes me so angry.
Why?
Like, it's not a good movie. in general, but it makes me mad for a couple of reasons, actually. Let's start with the more benign aspect, at least for me, as far as my anger is concerned. This is a personal story told with the backdrop of the Deepwater Horizon disaster, and that's still such a tragedy. That is still such a thing that is still pervasive to this day. It still haunts the residents of Louisiana. They're still fending off the repercussions of it, and a lot of them are still destitute because of it. And I feel like, because these are all fictional people, these are not actual, like, real life people. Like, Colin Price isn't a real person, Frank LeGrand's not a real person, like, they're not actual people involved. So this is a fictional story set to the backdrop of one of the most horrific things that happened to Louisiana within like a 20-year span, right? Like, there was a whole 2-decade period where just nothing but shit happened to Louisiana and all of the Gulf coastal states. So that's number one that made me kind of upset, because they had an opportunity by using this disaster to do something really interesting about telling the story about it, and they didn't do that. Number two, and the thing that's probably got me most upset, is just the content. The entire content of the movie. A man betrays his wife and then has to deal with the consequences of it. And due to those consequences, cannot get back the life that he had previously, and instead now has to go to the dark side to reclaim any semblance of what he had before in order to make recompense for what he did. And it's such an old, tired male diatribe that I'm just so over it. I'm so over it. And to use that juxtaposed with the Deepwater Horizon disaster, I'm furious. I'm furious about it.
You're
I'm
not
sorry.
wrong. You're
I'm
not
sorry. I'm
wrong
just
in any of your
furious.
points. You're not wrong on any of your points.
Like, I'm affronted, honestly.
I thought this movie was a bore. I literally fell asleep watching this movie.
It was. And I think that's probably what kept stoking my anger, is that it just wasn't ending fast enough. It was just dragging.
I hate that Colin goes out on this limb, and like, in his first meeting with Mark, he's like, green energy is the way, it has to be the way, it's gonna be the way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And by the end of the movie, he has, like, he goes through, I mean, on some level, this movie is a journey of his inner life, right? He is standing for liberal ideals. He is pushing back against big business and big oil. He is having affairs because he's not feeling complete in his love life with his wife. He starts drinking again.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end, he has given all of that up, is back with his wife, and is taking the pro big oil side. He is a man who loses all of his scruples.
Yeah.
And that's depressing.
It is. It is really depressing. It was really depressing to watch. I just think that from my perspective, it's something that I've seen so many times, that this is not, like, new to me. Like, I understand the idea that, public servants are humans. They are human beings. But the thing to me about public servants is that the public is your office. It doesn't really matter where you are. When you're an elected official, if you're elected by the public and you serve the public, anywhere that you go that is a public space is your office and is therefore at that level of scrutiny. So if you wouldn't, as someone that worked in a corporate setting, say, if you wouldn't have steamy McSteamy time in an elevator at the office with a coworker, then as a public official, you should know that anywhere in public being your office, you shouldn't do any of those things in office. And yet, we continue to see men in powerful positions like this continuing to have infidelity scandals because they don't take their jobs seriously enough.
Yeah.
Because they don't care that they're public servants. They don't care enough about the fact that they're elected by the public to rein in their very human impulses until they can get to a place that's outside of their office.
Yep.
And I don't really have a whole lot of like sympathy for those people. I can have empathy with them being human, and this is like a human thing, but I think if you're going to be in that kind of position and hold yourself to that kind of a standard, that you actually have to hold yourself to that standard. I don't know. This story was very boring to me because it's just a same old kind of thing. I will say though that I do get from Cage's perspective, because I read a couple of things about him doing this movie, the appeal that there was of taking this role, because using political infidelity as a tactic is disgusting. Like, I'm not disagreeing with that at all. And it absolutely ruins lives. It ruins entire families. It absolutely does that. But like, again, like, so is cheating on someone. It's a shitty thing to do. I don't know. I don't really feel bad for cheaters that get caught. I feel bad for the people that get cheated on. And
Yep.
not just them, like the potential, like, large family systems that are impacted by it. Like, that's, and also, I don't know, him driving through his wife's house because she changed the gate code. Like, I get that, like, in the scene, like, you know, he wasn't like actually throwing a tantrum. He was very subdued. He clearly didn't know like what to do with his life at this point. Very lost. It's very well acted. I don't want to take apart from that. Cage acted this position very well. But like, his wife changed the gate code, and instead of calling her on the phone, he decided to drive through not just the gate of their driveway, but the fucking garage door after that. Like,
Yeah,
that's just,
and then he's sitting there in the car with this bloody face, and like the airbag has gone off, and she's on the outside going like, "Oh my god, are you okay? Open the door, open the door." So,
like,
I
yeah,
mean, it
it's a bit of a
not
tantrum.
only is it a tantrum, but he's also scaring her on
Yeah.
purpose. Yeah. Anyway, what do you want to give this movie?
Honestly, for me, like, it's an F. The movie is an F for me. I
Yeah,
didn't like
I'm
it.
not
It
gonna
made me
fight you on that.
angry. It was
I'm
boring.
not gonna. I literally fell asleep during it. I'm not gonna fight you on an F.
Twice. You literally fell asleep during it twice. And it literally took me 5 hours to watch it and do the write up because it was so boring and forever taking. I do want to say that I did enjoy Cage's performance. I thought that he gave a performance of a man who's going through this kind of change very accurately.
What would we give the caginess of it?
I actually enjoyed his performance. It was probably the only saving grace. I think that he played very well what a man going through this kind of situation looks like. His response to his father dying, and like, I mean, anything that happens after his father dying, like, you know, when he calls Kate, like, she doesn't know that his dad's dead when she breaks up with him. Like, Deborah doesn't know before he drives through her house that his dad's dead. Like, he acts very well in this movie. I am inclined to give him a B
Con,
for his effort.
his accent work is terrible.
His accent work is terrible, which is why it's not an A from me.
Can we do maybe a B
But
minus?
I do think that his acting was well. I could live with that, yeah.
All right, let's do a B minus for Cage.
Yeah. His acting was great, but his character is just irredeemable. Like, the answer to his problem was just to take evil money. Like, in order to, quote, redeem himself, he had to become an evil person and drop all of the things that he fights for.
Well, there you have it, kids. It's a bummer of a movie. We do not recommend it. But Nick Cage, as always, is pretty good. If you want to follow along with us, we are on socials. We are on Instagram at NotTheBeesPod. We have a Patreon set up at patreon.com/NotTheBees, where you get early access to these episodes. And if you want, you can kick us a few bucks. We would appreciate it if you would rate, review, like, subscribe, and all of the fun things that you can do within your podcatcher. That's it for this week. I've been Elizabeth.
And I've been Megs.
And we'll see you next time, kids.